Hello, Wu Ming here. This is my second TikTok live. I'm just gonna start by doing some exercise on this dip station of mine, and that way people can fill in, and then I can take questions, or if people want to learn about something specific, or have specific questions, I can answer those. But I'm going to just start by lifting my knees up and doing twisting, which is good for both the abdominals and the oblique muscles. This also puts considerable strain on the lower pectoralis major muscles. So it's a very useful exercise, and you're using your whole body weight. So it's actually very useful for martial arts training. It can improve your punches as well as your kicks, and because you're working your abdominals and your core muscles, it's really involved in almost every movement in martial arts. It's a good way to get the blood flowing as well. Hello everyone that's joined already. Like I said, if you have any questions, just ask. I'm just doing some training. It's going to be Qigong and martial arts training. Just kind of trying to get warmed up. So, one of the things I like to do before training is to get a good stretch to my legs. Doing a splits, which I'm not very good at. I can only get, to a certain distance from the ground, which is okay. You don't actually need to be able to do the full splits to be a martial artist, although some people might disagree. It's totally untrue. This is called a low back stance. Also good for stretching the groin muscles and the leg muscles. Again, I'm going to do it on both sides. I call that ambidextrous training. Pretty much you want to equalize the training you do on the left and right side of your body, to keep both sides of your body usable in a fight, to keep them both functioning the best they can be, to get the most out of both sides of your body in a fight or in any sort of exercise. Because in all honesty, it's not that likely to get in a fight. Fights happen very rarely, even to people that get in lots of fights. It's still not something that's going to happen every day. And so although self-defense is important, martial arts has a lot to do with health, confidence, various other aspects of life that can be useful in every aspect of life. Still no questions, I guess. I guess a technique or a drill that we could go through. This is a drill from Mopai Kung Fu, White Tiger style Kung Fu, my first martial art. The drill is called the 7 knife hands. So you would get back into this is called a bow stance. And then you want this hand in this chamber, which is you come out with knife hand number 1, knife hand number 2, knife hand number 3, knife hand number 4, knife hand number 5, number 6, sorry, 5, 6, thought it was 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, yeah. So those are the 7 knife hands. At first you want to practice things slowly to get the technique proper. And then when you've practiced it a lot, you can go a little faster. The target for this strike is going to be the side of the neck. This is also the other side of the neck. This is for the bridge of the nose. This is for the groin. This is for the temple on your head. And this is for basically the brain stem or the back of your neck. So those are the typical targets for those. And a knife hand is supposed to be done with firm hands. You want to keep your fingers together and your thumb tucked in. The reason for that is if your fingers are wide or your thumb is not tucked in, it can get caught in clothing and can get broken or whatnot. So it is best to keep firm hands, thumb tucked in, and fingers together when doing a knife hand. In Mopai, the knife hand was supposed to be almost straight into the side of the neck, whereas in Okinawan karate I'm being taught now, it is to be a bit more of a diagonal attack coming down into the side of the neck. But both ways are effective, and I would leave it to other people to decide what kind they want to do. This is called a chain punch. In Wing Chun, people do the chain punch with the bottom 3 knuckles being emphasized, but you'll notice when I do it, I'm emphasizing the top 2 knuckles. That's just something that my teacher taught me. Other forms of martial arts use the top 2 knuckles, and so pretty much every martial art I've been taught uses the top 2 knuckles except Wing Chun. And so just in keeping with that, even when I do a chain punch, I decide to do it with the top 2 knuckles, but it is perfectly acceptable to use the bottom 3 knuckles. One of the things I wanted to talk about was a Tai Chi movement that I'm showing here. Again, this, like most Tai Chi, this doesn't look very useful in a fight, but this hand going back can be a grappling technique where I grab the guy's arm, pull in, and then I can go with, this is kind of a reverse ridge hand, so you could go right into the side of their neck or the temple or various other targets with this simple slow moving Tai Chi movement. If you do it fast, it can be used in self-defense in martial arts. These are just vertical punches. Not everybody thinks that it's okay to use a vertical fist, but it works. It's very effective. There's little chance of injuring yourself with it. It can be done to the solar plexus level, to the nose, to the groin. You could come in more like a hooking vertical fist to the ribs. But for that, you could also use basically an upside down fist to the ribs. There are many options of many different techniques to use. I would be wary of learning from anybody that says this is the only way to do something and that all other ways aren't effective and don't work, you know, and send $9.99 to, you know, my martial arts studio or whatever. These people are trying, this is a business and people are trying to sell their martial arts to you. Hello, how's it going in New Zealand, brother? New Zealand's a far ways off, for me anyway. But it is an interesting place. I also have some friends in Australia, so I could end up in the area, you never know. Just trying to think of what to talk about. How long have you been doing martial arts? I started martial arts when I was about 19. Even before that, I was reading books and practicing on my own. But when I was 19, I formally started taking martial arts at the Temple of Kung Fu in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And I trained for about 3 years there. I actually became an apprentice instructor. I was working my way towards being an instructor. I was teaching classes and everything. That was about age 22. I ended up having a bad experience with my instructors and left the temple, which was unfortunate, but kind of a sign of the times because the whole temple actually went bankrupt in a few more years. So, and then I went a long period of just training by myself, developing bad habits and whatnot. And then I would say about 4 years ago, I started training regularly again, under a teacher finally, and now I'm learning Tai Chi. I am a certified Tai Chi instructor, and I am now learning Okinawan karate as well, and hope to eventually get a black belt in that. But yeah, that's my, so yeah, I'd say about 4 years I've been training pretty much daily. So the last 4 years. Guess we could do some weapons. Typically the movements I do with this are like for a bow staff, because that's what I was trained on. But the size of this is more like a jo, something they would call a jo. And there are different ways of using a jo than a bow and whatnot. But the techniques I'll show with this are actually for a bow staff that is about shoulder height, and as you can see, this is much shorter, but I can still show the movements, and you could still use these movements with this size staff. It's just that I'm just saying there is other ways of using it, I guess. One of the things people don't realize about staff training is, like, when I do this, that's hitting my own shoulder, and so this is actually iron shirt training. You're actually hitting yourself. If you do the technique properly, you're not just hitting your opponent, you're hitting yourself in the shoulder there. And that is developing stronger resilience in your body. You're going to be used to taking strikes, and it's going to be harder for strikes to affect you. And that's a part of maybe more modern martial arts that doesn't get taught anymore, is iron shirt training, which is why it's something I talk about a lot. it's like one of the things that I would take from traditional martial arts, even if I was in MMA. I would actually really recommend doing Iron Shirt training on top of that, in order to develop a really resilient body that can take a lot of punishment. And yes, modern martial arts do have training methods for that. I just feel that the ancient training methods, you know, dating back to Shaolin Temple and Wudan Mountain, are very valuable and are actually more effective than any training you would get in an MMA gym for body resiliency. That's all I'm going to say. I'm sure that might piss some people off. Hello, Aaron. How's it going? Nice to see you. So yeah. So there are some strikes you can do with a bow staff. This would be like an uppercut under their chin. You could come back, hit them on the top of the head, then hit them in the side of the head. You can kind of stab them with the bow staff. A nice thing about a bow staff is it's very hard, or it's much harder to kill somebody with it than certain weapons. It's easier to defend yourself without hurting your opponent too much. And you might think that's odd for me to think about, but if you hurt your opponent too much, you yourself could end up being in jail or having negative, could be financial problems, but negative legal issues because of it. Following the foot training. I believe I would need a partner for that, wouldn't I? Because it's like mimicking. Following the foot training is from Mopai, and it's basically you're mimicking the movement that your opponent is coming with. At least that's how I remember. So you're trying to like match. If he steps forward left, you're stepping backward left, and so on and so forth. And you're trying to match. You're trying to keep the distance between the two of you the same type thing. But that's really hard to show without a partner. A lot of just nonsensical comments. You can block. I mean, pretty much any strike is a block. Any block is a strike. So this can be a block. You could be blocking somebody's weapon out of the way and then come up with a strike. This can be hitting, so like cross-checking in hockey, basically. Hitting someone in the head, hitting someone in the solar plexus, stomach. You could come into the groin like that. And again, it's always easy to, if you go low, it's easy to go high afterwards. If you go right, it's easy to go left, etc. This one-handed stuff I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but it can be done. It's more fancy or whatnot, but you have less control over the weapon. So if you're using this one-handed, it's easier for an opponent to strip you of the weapon and use it against you. Fallout technique. Not sure I remember that either. You can do circular motions, which is almost like sword fighting stuff. At least Chinese straight sword fighting. So anyways, I'm just going to do some, I think just some random Qigong. Actually, I kind of developed this routine from Mopai, and in combination with Tai Chi and Qigong I'm learning now. But it's very effective for Iron Shirt and for leg strength. First you pull into a traditional chamber, which that can be modified into whatever you want, but this is just a drill. So you come into a traditional chamber, and then this is called a foot sweep. So it's really, if someone were to kick to my groin area, I'm kicking their kick out of the way, and then it drops me down into this horse stance or sumo stance. I prefer a sumo stance. A horse stance would just be having the feet going directly straight, whereas the sumo stance is having your feet, I think it's at a 45-degree angle, so it's a bit looser of a stance, a bit easier to be in, a bit quicker to transition from, and that's why I prefer the sumo stance. But many people swear by the horse stance, including my first Grandmaster Simon. He would not allow you to do a sumo stance even, whereas some styles have both. In my style, we did not have a sumo stance because it was just considered wrong. So it's funny that it's actually my favorite stance, or favorite way to do a horse stance. Then, so from here, you do what's called pushing the mountain, which is Mopai. Maintain a bridge between your tongue and the roof of your mouth for the chi to flow through. Then this is butterfly palms, which is actually kind of from Hung Gar. And then you would chamber again and go into the open X stance, and then do the same movements. And then do it on the other side. And then this is kind of a Shaolin Kung Fu thing. And you could stop there, or there's a different version of pushing the mountain you could do afterwards. So in Qigong, what we're doing when we breathe is we're constricting the muscles from the top to the bottom of the abdominal cavity, and this forces extra air out, cleanses the lungs a bit more, as well as gives a better stretch and exercise to the intercostal muscles, the diaphragm, the abdominal muscles, intercostal muscles, everything involved in breathing. And this creates what's called the golden bell, or the iron shirt. And this allows you, it's just the same with Sanchen in Okinawan karate. You're creating an iron shirt, a golden bell that people can strike, and as long as you're ready, it's very hard to actually wind you or to hurt you in any significant way. And like I said, the added benefit of that exercise is the legs. Doing the sumo stance and the open X stances gives you a very good leg workout. You can even just sit there and do more and more repetitions of that, switching from horse stance or sumo stance into open X, back to horse stance, back to open X. Even if you just did that over and over again, you would get tremendous leg strength and tremendous kicking power from it. This is called a tiger's claw. It's actually one of the most dangerous techniques. It can be used to the groin or to the throat. I'm not going to go into it too much further than that. But it's a very deadly technique sometimes. And it looks showy, it looks fake, looks not usable in a fight, but it's actually one of the most effective techniques that I'm even aware of. Obviously, you have to find a way to get that strike on somebody. When you're talking about, like, this is the deadliest strike, that does you no good if you can't apply it to somebody. Like, it may be a deadly technique even, but if you are not in the shape you need to be, if you're not fast enough, if you're not strong enough to pull off the technique, then you may as well not have the technique even. What's it for then? What are you going to do with it? Even this fallout technique. That's called a crescent kick. Inside, outside, crescent kick. Outside, inside, crescent kick. It's a very useful technique in my opinion. I can easily do it to head height. Some people can't. But it's even though it looks better, say, to the head, you can do it at mid-level to the ribs, and it can be just as effective that way. And it can be used as a block if somebody comes in to punch or kick. And if you do it low, it can be for low kicks as well, which is basically just that foot sweep that I showed in that iron shirt technique. Thank you, brother. Thank you for coming out. Yeah, this is only my second live by myself. I've done a few with my teacher, but this is the first or the second one I've done by myself, so I'm still a little new to it. I gotta think more about, like, how to structure, if I should be doing structured lessons and whatnot, because doing it just random like this, it lends to, like, moments where I forget what to talk about, or I can't think of something to talk about. Thank you, Zuki. Thank you for coming out. Trying to think. So, I'm just going to talk about kind of a strategy for fighting. Say something like boxing or kickboxing, you can't even use this strategy. So, I mean, you kind of can, but it's not the same. You can grapple in boxing, but it's like you got gloves on, right? So you can kind of control your opponent a little bit by putting your gloves on his shoulders or something, or hugging him. But that's the extent of your grappling ability with gloves on. And in a real fight, you're not going to have gloves on, or what situation are you in where you have gloves on? I live in a very cold place, so we do actually wear gloves, but often the gloves have fingers and whatnot, and you could take your gloves off if you have to. And this is only in winter. In the summer, it's just like anywhere else. But the strategy that I want to go over is grappling. And a lot of people think that I can't do this, but I've literally done it in sparring. Sorry, getting sweat in my eye. I've literally done it in sparring and in more controlled practice with a resisting partner, though. But where they punch and you grab their punch, and they might hit you. They might even hit you, but you grab their punch, okay? This can happen. This is possible. A lot of people think that's not possible. So you grapple the person. From there, you can grapple them in any way you want. but you've got your hand, you got one hand on the opponent, and I would suggest having the other hand free. And what this does, first of all, is brings you in really close to your opponent, so you don't have to worry as much about them kicking you. If they were going to kick you, it'd be really short kicks into the groin or something like that, so keep your groin protected. But from here, you have the ability to pull them into the strike, giving you more power. You can strike pretty much anywhere. You can use elbows. You're in close enough that you can, and if you're not close enough, you can pull them close enough to get in elbow strikes. And I don't know if you've ever taken an elbow to the face. One time I took 3 elbows to the face from somebody much taller and bigger than me. Somehow I was still standing, but I think most people would not still be standing. Even one elbow is a very devastating technique. If you get good power into one elbow strike to somebody's head, there's a good chance they're out of the fight or going down or whatever. Yeah, well, I mean, we can do basics. It's not quite as fun, but you have your traditional chambered thrust punches that a lot of people don't think are useful or whatever, but they're great for training, first of all. They're great for getting this push-pull movement, the pulling back, the hikite, and simultaneously with the other side of your body, which is useful in many different strikes, many different techniques. It's good to get that. And it's the same with this grappling I'm talking about. You're using one side of your body to pull and the other side to push at the same time to get your opponent off balance, to get more power into the strike. It's much easier or much more possible for your opponent to even fall over because of that. And if you want, you can go in for some sort of takedown and just, make it easy to take them down. Yeah. What else? I wanted to talk about how generally, at least in my style of martial arts, we were taught closed-handed techniques first for blocks. Mostly because when your fist is together, it's harder to break or harder to injure. But you can do all these blocks. It's like the same blocks, basically, with an open hand, right? But now it's much easier to injure your open hand. But I would say there's benefits to it. It's obviously something for advanced students. But, this is to me slower generally than this. So if this is faster, it's possible that's the difference between blocking a strike and the strike hitting me, right? I want every edge I can get, and so technically I actually prefer open-handed blocks, but they are more dangerous, and beginner students shouldn't do them. They should wait till they are much faster and quicker and stronger. But there is a place for using open-handed techniques, open-handed strikes, palm strikes, whatnot. You can do palm strike sideways to the solar plexus, to the rib cage. Is this floating blocks? I can't even remember what this is called. But yeah, you could do it with closed fists or open fist. Yeah, okay, good, because now I have a name for it at least. There's a lot of stuff like that from Mopai where I just know it because I've practiced it so much, but I have no idea what it's called anymore. Trying to think. I've been showing this a lot without talking about it, but this is the butterfly punch. So you kind of want to have your fist like this, and then, and in a certain way, this is much like the hidden distance punch I was showing in a video, because you're getting more like you have more range. You have more range because your shoulders are turned the whole way, as opposed to a punch like this. As you can see, you can get a much further range towards your opponent. The punching backwards, people often think for two opponents, which it could be, but actually this is just generally to gain more power, because that movement going back is pulling your front into the attack. So you're just kind of getting a bit extra power out of it. Yeah, the butterfly punch. Yeah, I train in Kung Fu, but also now Okinawan karate. I would say my base is Kung Fu. I always loved Shaolin Kung Fu. And so, like, since a young child, watching movies and everything, I was always drawn to Kung Fu, and so I would just say my movement in general is more Kung Fu than anything, if you can really quantify it. I see a lot of similarities between Kung Fu and karate, so for me, Kung Fu is karate, karate is Kung Fu. Kempo just means law of the fist, fist method. What is karate if not a fist method? What is Kung Fu Wushu if not a fist method? So to me, everything is everything as far as martial arts go, but formally I am trained in Kung Fu more than anything, because also Tai Chi as well, even some Wing Chun. Trying to think. So this is a bow stance. Might be hard to tell from this camera angle, but, and you kind of want to be in a stance where if you pivot to this direction, that you're also still in a proper bow stance. So you can fight this way, fight that way. And then there's something called a broken bow, which is kind of more like this, which is actually a bit more combative and almost like a boxer's stance. And again, you can do that pivot quite easily, quite quickly. So if you're fighting an opponent this direction, it's easy to come for a multiple attacker. Which again, multiple attackers is something that Kung Fu and more traditional martial arts are good at. And there might be things like BJJ that are more specialized for one-on-one fighting. Again, people will disagree, but just saying it. I have some 15-pound weights here. I like to combine weight training with martial arts, just like Bruce Lee did. I think Bruce Lee himself, as an experiment, shows that there's value in lifting weights in martial arts. And then, I mean, if you look traditionally, even in Okinawa, say, they had pots they would grab like this, right, for grip strength. And in Shaolin Temple, they had like buckets of water they would hold out to the side, shit like that. And that's all weight training. It's just an ancient form of weight training, because they didn't have weights and kettlebells or whatever. They found another way to do weight training, but it's still weight training. So really, weight training has always been a part of martial arts. Anyone who says differently just doesn't know any better, I guess. Yeah. But also you can like punch. I would do this slowly with weights this heavy, but you can like do a punch movement. When I was first taking Kung Fu, I started doing this when I was young, like 20 years old. And immediately, I would say about 4 days after starting this, just doing like stuff like this, I was in, you know, training with some partners at the Temple of Kung Fu, and I was immediately way strong. Like I felt like I was twice as strong when I was blocking people's blocks and stuff. And I'm talking about 4 days of training with weights. So just imagine a lifetime of training with weights in the way I'm doing now. And it can really improve your blocks, really improve your strikes, really improve your grappling. It really affects everything. And it just makes you stronger. Yes, believe it or not, I was 20 years old at some point in my life. Not sure about that comment. There's a punch I really like. I think I like it because everyone hates it. But it's a version of an overhand right that you can see Chuck Liddell uses it a lot. Boo, like kind of like that. And you can put your other hand up here to block anything. And you kind of can lean it in a way where the strike comes right into your opponent's face. And I think Chuck Liddell proved that it's effective and powerful. A good knockout punch, in my opinion. But a lot of people have a problem with the fact that I invert it. They would prefer to do this, which I think increases the chance of a boxer's fracture. And as I've discussed before, sorry, still sweat getting in my eye, I wouldn't recommend using a closed fist to somebody's hard targets like their forehead or anywhere close to their forehead. When I do this, I'm thinking more of striking their nose than anything, or the temple, which the temple is a great knockout punch, but the temple is a very small target and they can easily put their head down like that and you're hitting, you know, the hardest part of their body now, and you might injure yourself. So typically I would, and if you're wearing boxing gloves or MMA gloves, then fine, go for it, just go for it. But in a real street situation, it's not going to be like that. And I would recommend using hard fists for body punches, solar plexus, bladder, even the throat. You can do it to the side of the jaw or the nose, but again, you're getting yourself close to something that's dangerous when you do that. So it can be done, but just be careful about it, I guess. What else? Oh, I was thinking of talking about striking to the joints, which comes from Mopai. I'm sure they do it in other martial arts, but if somebody comes with a punch, you can actually strike the wrist and strike the elbow joint at the same time. Or even you can take it, strike up under into the armpit and hit their elbow joint. And doing this was called striking the joints, and you can do it this way and then come back this way really easily. So, and then you could go into knife hands or something like that. It's a really, this back and forth and then maybe two strikes. That's a really good combination. And it works against many different attacks, like 2 attacks at the same time, and then you come back with 2 strikes. And any situation like that, you could do any 2 strikes after, It doesn't have to be these knife hands, but you could use the knife hands as well. You should go train after this. Everyone should. Training is very important. I've been sick for about 2 weeks and I'm still training every day. It's made it like it's not as an efficient practice and I'm not getting the benefit out of it that I normally do. And I try to stay away from really intense exercise when I'm sick, but I still exercise every day. And then when I finally feel fully healed, which I'm getting close, but then I'll really start getting more intense again with my workouts. But it might look like I'm slacking lately, but it's just because I'm sick. Poison hands. There's a lot of people that would have me not ever talk about stuff like that. Like it's too dangerous or whatever. But the thing is, I've read books on the internet that are out there for everyone to see showing it already. And then like they're gonna get that information and then use it improperly because no one's shown them how to use it properly, right? Like that's the way I see it. But there are a lot of people that are like, you shouldn't show like an eye rake, you shouldn't show a fish hook, or I was getting into it earlier, the tiger claw to the throat, or a leopard fist to the throat. You know, stuff like that they're very lethal attacks. And I would want to say, like, nobody should use these unless they absolutely have to. But there are situations where you do have to save your life, and therefore go for it. And the other thing is, yeah, I would rather you know how to do it properly, so you don't injure yourself or don't unnecessarily injure your partner or your opponent, I guess. But yeah, so getting to that, there's like a way you can block and strike at the same time, and you could do like a eye rake like that is considered poison hands, just because it's so. This isn't lethal, but it's very debilitating, right? Like you take someone's eye out. Like that sticks with them for the rest of their life. I'm not sure it would make them blind, but it could easily. There's like a poke more, so you block down and then you could come up into their eyes. The tiger claw to the throat, you're going around the esophagus, getting to the windpipe, the trachea behind, and crushing it as much as you can. And the more you do fingertip push-ups and the more you do fingertip body conditioning, bone density training, the more deadly this becomes. The more forearm strength you have. I have these things, these things for grip exercise. If you do this a lot, like exercises like this, it makes this tiger claw even stronger, right? And so maybe somebody that's untrained, if they use this, it's not going to do shit. It's not going to do shit to anybody. But if you're really trained, if you do fingertip push-ups where you're lifting your whole body weight on your fingertips, when you go in to do this, now this is much more dangerous, much more effective. Be very cautious of using that. Like I say, it's something to use. It's like as a last hope type thing when you're really getting your ass kicked. You're really outclassed by your opponent. Your opponent has a weapon. He has some advantage over you. Then you might use tactics like that. But that's the only time you should use them. So there is that moral aspect to teaching stuff like that, where, like, I think in certain, let's just say certain gyms, they might teach that irresponsibly even, where it's funny or something to take an eye out of your opponent, which it isn't funny at all. And again, the more lethal force you use, the more likely you are to be in legal problems or legal issues afterwards. So it really doesn't make sense for self-defense to be using, in a self-defense situation, if I can, I'd rather just get my opponent down on the ground, hit him a few times, and get away. Because that way I'm not going to jail for the rest of my life because I killed this guy with one, I don't know, like one tiger claw to the throat or something. Or even if you take somebody's eye out, they're going to want to sue you. They're going to want, you to pay for damages you've done and all this crap. And the police have to, and the judge has to look at it as, was this necessary? So say the same thing to yourself in that situation. Is this necessary? And do what's necessary to defend yourself. But I would suggest not doing more than necessary, I guess. No stance remains the same. Yeah, I would agree with the statement, no stance remains the same, but I'm not quite sure of the exact teaching of that. So do this. Yeah, so I like to grapple, strike, take down my opponent, strike them a few more times, and run away. Or if it's a really bad situation, maybe dislocate something, break something, run away. But I'd rather not actually kill somebody for obvious reasons, both moral reasons and legal reasons. False openings. Yeah, so I was talking about in Tai Chi, there's this movement, and even it's in all forms of Kung Fu, and Sanchen, right? Like, this is all the same movement, right? Like, I hope people can see that. Like, there's all these different styles. Like, in Tai Chi, it goes like this. In Sanchen, it goes like this, but it's like the same thing, right? It just looks different. But when it comes to an actual fight, it's the same thing. Somebody tries to kick me in between in this spot, or what? Even I can have a big opening, but they come to kick me, and I can grab and grapple their legs, try to attack the remaining leg, pull them off balance, throw them to the ground, strike them, get away. And a false opening, you can create this false opening knowing your opponent is likely to attack it, right? You're creating a situation that looks like you're weak, but you're prepared for it, and you expect your opponent to hit there, and then when he does, you're ready for it. You grapple him, you have a technique in mind to use after that, and that's what I would call a false opening. There are many different ways to do a false opening. I just showed a few there. Very effective tactic. In general, you want to use things that seem like a weakness can often be used as a strength. For instance, when someone comes to attack you, if you were an alpha male-minded person, you would think, I don't want to budge, I don't want to lose any ground to my opponent, I want to keep pushing forward. But actually, when your opponent strikes you, it's better to yield to it, because you're taking his power away. He's coming in with power, but now you're moving in the same direction as his power already, and you can twist your shoulders out of the way. He might miss you entirely because you yielded to his strike. Whereas this tough guy attitude of, I'm going to be strong, that's going to actually make you face more pain, more power than you had to face, right? And that's very big in like Aikido and Tai Chi, or Aikijijutsu and Tai Chi, is this idea of, first of all, circular movements, but of using your opponent's strength against him yielding to the strength, taking that strength and using it against him, essentially, right? Because he's putting him, the more he commits to his strike, the more he's off balance. And that's where it gets very effortless to throw your opponent onto the ground, to do takedowns with just little gestures, that look fake sometimes, but are actually real. Judo is great. In Mopai, they taught a few judo throws, actually. So I have no problem with judo. Judo's great. Yeah, it comes from Japanese jiu-jitsu, though. So I think generally I would want to learn Japanese jiu-jitsu because I'm learning judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well as what is not taught in those martial arts. A lot of people don't know that Japanese jiu-jitsu is actually the father of judo, and judo is the father of BJJ. You would think if you were really into BJJ that you would take the time to learn that history. History is very important. History is not going to make you necessarily a better fighter, but it can in a certain way. Like, if it teaches you that, say, you might overestimate BJJ and underestimate Aikido or Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, for instance. It's a very common situation. But if you read the history and whatnot, even Aikido comes from Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, which is Jiu-Jitsu. A form of Jiu-Jitsu. So it's just, I forget what I'm trying to say now. Oh, that like reading the history, knowing the history of it, you might actually get interested in, like you can still do your BJJ, no one's telling you not to, but you could get into Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, you could get into Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, judo, etc. And I think that would enhance your practice and your ability as a martial artist. But in no way am I saying to stop training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm just saying you could add so much to that that would really help you. And whenever someone says I'm Jason Bourne or Jesus Christ, it's Jason Bourne, I always take it as a compliment, and I always will. I loved Jason Bourne movies. They're a tad unrealistic, but there's a lot of good fight scenes. Thing about that movie series, because there's like 5 Jason Bourne movies now, it's like, don't you think the CIA would give up? I mean, they've been trying to kill this guy for 5 movies, and they're just like, and like they'll put a new guy in charge of the CIA or something, and he's like, we have to kill this Jason Bourne. And he doesn't get the fact that like it's probably not very likely they're gonna succeed from the other movies. If it were real life, of course, they would probably succeed, but in the movie, it seems like he's pretty invincible. Great movies, though. Those movies actually really inspired me to train a lot. Every time I see those movies, I feel like picking up a book and smashing someone to death with it, or something like that. Well, it is realistic, but it isn't. It's realistic movements and tactics, but it's unrealistic how they play out in the fight. That's what I mean. Like nobody's that good. You know what I mean? And not even a master or whatever is going to look like Jason Bourne does in the movie, because they're doing slow motion, they're doing fast motion, whatever. They're doing everything they can to make this movie look as fantastic as possible, so it's still not realistic, right? Like, it's real, but it is like real movements. It's same with John Wick, say, but like, I think there's a Navy SEAL talking about it, how he can't stand John Wick because when he's watching it, he counts the bullets that he's firing, and he says there's no way that he has that many bullets in his gun, right? And it's stuff like that that makes it unrealistic. Like, yeah, he's doing realistic stuff, but it's just the way it's all happening is not realistic in some way because it's a movie, right? Okay, my phone is testing whether I'm a computer. I don't know why it does that during a live. I guess they think I'm a Terminator or AI or something. I really like this, or I'm going to discuss a few techniques. One is from Tai Chi, that is like this. So really you're punching on both ears or both temples of your opponent. Which, if you do this right, if you do this quickly, your opponent could actually just fall over, even just be so disoriented and lose his balance and fall over. Or actually you could kill somebody doing it. And another version of that, or I don't know if you'd call it a version of that, but it's a similar technique from Mo Pai, where so you cup this hand, you cup this ear, and you hammer fist the other ear, and then you pull in and come out with an eye gouge, basically, and rip out their eyes if you want. Again, don't do this unless you have to in a very dangerous situation. But these are just that alone is a very powerful technique. The ears control a lot of the body's balance, so when you hit their ears like that, initially, generally, people will just fall over. Like, it really does happen. Yes, I've heard of Jean LaBelle. Somehow, I feel like that's leading to a discussion of Steven Seagal, but I'd rather not go there in a live, personally. Talk about one of the most ridiculous debates in martial arts. Yeah, what am I? Oh, so I'm almost at an hour now. Like I say, I want to work on the structure of these lives to make them better, because I feel like, I don't know, I'm just going too random right now on just different techniques. I would rather actually structure it a little bit with like a, I don't know, more like a skills class or something, designed for body conditioning. But again, I've been sick lately, so doing like lots of cardio is not necessarily the best thing for me right now, but I do want to get into that. And so like I think my upcoming videos might focus more on body conditioning than anything, although like right now I'm just teaching everything I can think of or anything that comes into my mind. Obviously, if people ask questions or bring up things in the comments section, that helps me direct, like, what I should say, what I can teach, what I can share type thing, what I can do to help people in their martial arts journey. Well, I got a little bit of time, so I might do some Boken practice. This is actually from Japan. My sister took Kendo when she taught English in Japan, and she brought this back from there. They gave this to her as a gift. She doesn't use it anymore. She doesn't practice anymore, unfortunately. I think she should. But I have taken temporary ownership anyway of this Boken. And I think it's a great training device. It doesn't necessarily look it, but it's fairly heavy. So you're getting, when you could even just, like they do this in Kendo, just over and over, say. But if you do this, say 100 times or whatever, you really start developing some shoulder strength, forearm strength, I'd say triceps, latissimus dorsi. Like, there's a lot of muscles used in this movement, plus you're getting flexible from going back. So this is flexibility that you can use in punches or grappling or blocking or whatever. So training with a weapon actually enhances your ability to defend yourself without a weapon. Of course, it helps you defend yourself with a weapon, but training with a weapon is, for me, actually more about improving my regular self-defense without a weapon. However, it is good to know how to use a weapon. That way, if you do happen to find a weapon in a self-defense situation, you can pick it up and use it. I mean, a stick is not too different from a sword. A pipe is not too different. I would know how to use a hammer. I would know how to use a screwdriver. A friend of mine, Zuki King, who I don't know, yeah, you're still here maybe, wanted me to do a series on how you can use anything as a weapon, which unfortunately I don't have a screwdriver near me, but I was going to do one with a screwdriver, or an ice pick or whatever. But basically, from using different weapons like a sai and bokken, sword, bow, etc., it becomes pretty easy. You actually start to think, even looking at ordinary objects, it becomes pretty easy to use them in self-defense. Like for instance, every part of the weapon is a weapon. The end, this is called the suka, I think, on a samurai sword. This is actually a strike. When it's actually part of like every sword routine they go like this, and a lot of people don't notice that's actually a strike to somebody's head with the hilt of the weapon, and then they come down and strike. So like, you know, even the weapon itself can be used in many different ways. Yeah, look up the word suka though. I believe that's the handle. Anyway. Go Power Rangers. So anyway, I don't know. It's been an hour. It's 8 o'clock. So I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna take off. I might do some random videos that are not live afterwards, and then next week I will try to do another live at 7 p.m. I'll let you know if the time changes or whatever. Thank you for everyone that came out. Blessings to everyone. Keep training, and have a happy and joyful life.